Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Taking a look at the Week 6 slate. And we got a matchup of undefeated SEC teams as the Kentucky Wildcats head into Athens and play a Georgia team that a lot of people want to say they're sleepwalking, don't look like the number one team. I'll tell you this much. Kirby Smart does not care about winning games by 7 points early in September. He cares about winning by games by 21 points at the end of December and into January. So for me, looking at this Georgia team, really banged up. Definitely not concerned about where this Georgia team is. But I will say Kentucky. I mean, every single year, Mark Stoops has this team ready to play. It's one of the most well-coached teams in the country. There's some interesting matchups I want to get into. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. The support you guys have shown the boys for all these game breakdowns truly does mean a lot. So if you enjoy the content, you want to support the fellas, consider subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, and again, best part about doing this, let us know in the comment section your picks, predictions, keys to the matchup. They'll, without further ado, undefeated matchup. Kentucky heading on the road to Georgia. How are we feeling here?
And Mark Stoops, like, all the credit in the world to him. He's built this Kentucky program into a team that can challenge Georgia. I mean, we've seen a handful of games now with Georgia and Kentucky that are really tightly contested games, even when you kind of think Georgia's coming in where Kentucky might be overmatched. I mean, the Wildcats play hard. They don't really beat themselves ever. And certainly it doesn't look like they're doing that this year now that they're running the ball the way they want to. So I'm kind of excited to see what they can do against this Georgia Bulldogs team that, as you've mentioned, is off to a bit of a slower start and does have a lot of guys banged up.
That's the thing with Georgia is everyone wants to say like it's a slow start for Georgia. They have like a lot of their key guys either not playing at 100% or just not playing, period. But to echo what you said, I mean, Coach Stoops, I don't know if I could name 10 better head coaches in the country than him. I mean, every single year has this team, every single year it's the same narrative. It's a well-coached team, plays really good on defense, can run the football, and we're saying the same thing this year for this Kentucky team. Let's start on the Kentucky offense going up against the Georgia team that you talk about. Kentucky wants to run the football. Teams don't want to run it against Georgia. Like before that Auburn game, teams were running it 30% of the time against Georgia. Obviously, Auburn kind of skewing those numbers a little bit. Though I think the biggest question is, can Ray Davis in this Kentucky Wildcats offense run the ball against the Georgia front seven that I know has some injuries, still an elite group?
And that's the thing. I think if you look at what Georgia did against Auburn yesterday, I mean, you might think, oh, this is a susceptible front seven. Like a team like Kentucky can go run on them. But just like looking at how Auburn did what they did it with quarterback run. They had a couple of running backs going, a couple quarterbacks going. And frankly, just the way they were attacking that rushing attack, it had the linebackers for Georgia playing a little slower, a little less aggressive than you're used to seeing them. And that honestly seemed like how they were getting it done, along with the fact that, like, just being honest, like Jarquez Hunter and Peyton Thorne, those guys ran the ball well behind an offensive line that played really good football. So, I mean, it's not so much to me like, oh, Georgia's weak. I mean, Auburn had a really good game plan, played a game that, frankly, I'm not sure Kentucky's well equipped to kind of match that type of
I think that's a really good point. Like, you go back and watch that Georgia Auburn. If you were to just watch from the box score, or you're like, oh, this Georgia team can't stop the run. Like, right, they gave up almost over 200 yards rushing, I believe. You go back and watch, and I did the rewatch this morning. I couldn't agree more with you. Like, Hugh Freeze and that Auburn offense did a phenomenal job scheming up these runs. A lot of misdirection, a lot of attack in the perimeter. And you saw Georgia definitely struggled a little bit with that. It got better in the second half. You get to Kentucky in their offense and how they want to run the football.
I mean, that's a tradition. It's a traditional power scheme, down blocks, and that you need to, like, your guys need to just go play really good football. In Kentucky, in fairness, their offensive line's made a monster improvement. It feels like from last year to this year, I should say. And Ray Davis is obviously playing at an incredibly high level. But I'm interested to see, like, that's the type of scheme like Michigan went in and tried to run it 2 years ago against Georgia, and they obviously just hammered Michigan. So
yeah, I agree. Kentucky's offensive attack rushing the football is going to be try to, like, dominate you. The question is, can they dominate this Georgia front seven with guys like Nazir Stack? Like, just
they did go out there and dominate a Florida team that honestly we thought was playing good football. So it's like, I do think they have guys. To me, I think the real question is, like, I think the rushing attack will be okay. I don't think they're going to, like, kill Georgia like maybe what Auburn did, frankly, on the ground. But I'm going to be looking for Devin Leary. He needs to return to what he was doing in 2021 in NC State when we were kind of talking about him as a first-round quarterback, because really that's not what he's been playing at the level this year.
You look at Devin Leary's numbers from yesterday against Florida, like 19 of 20 for 69 yards. It was the Ray Davis show, and rightfully so. Ray Davis might be the best back in the SEC. I mean, he is absolutely incredible, was incredible. Dill, I'm completely with you. It seems like Kentucky will have to find some sort of explosive plays, especially through the air, to beat this Georgia team. But you look at this Georgia secondary, and it's something that we talked about heading into the season. That's where I think the strength of this group is. And traditionally, we're talking about Georgia's front seven and all the NFL draft picks they produced. Yes, they have a good front seven. That being said, I mean, Dalen Everett playing really good ball. Lassiter, Kamari Stocks, Javon Buller, Tyke Smith. Like, this is a loaded secondary. And Kentucky's got some guys, right? Tavian Robinson, Dane Key, Barian Brown. Can they find those explosive plays against a Georgia secondary that is allowing 4.9 yards per pass, a 55% completion percentage? That, to me, seems like a massive story of the game.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's just getting the ball downfield, but like, that'll be part of it for sure, because I do think off of play action, that type of thing can work. But I also think that's using them in screens, using them on reverses, because like when you get the ball in a guy like Key's hand, I mean, he's got like the ability to run.
Barian Brown too. Barian Brown's like probably the fastest player in the SEC. Tavian Robinson too. Elite quickness. Like, these guys can create after the catch, and that's probably where your attack is. Like, can we get it to the perimeter in these guys' hands and force Georgia to tackle?
Especially because you got tight ends who they all block at an incredibly high level. Yes. I mean, that's almost like, as much as the offensive line was standing out, their tight ends, all three of them block really, really well. So that's, to me, I'm looking, because I don't know. It feels like it's going to be tough sledding just trying to hammer it on Georgia, because, yeah, whatever they like, you think, oh, this guy went to the NFL last year and so forth. They're always big. They're always physical, yes, and they always play really good in that front seven. So I do think they're going to need to try to take a page a little bit out of the Auburn playbook and do something that creates some conflict and kind of just slows these linebackers down and keeps them from just coming downhill. Because if they're doing that, I'm not sure that Kentucky can just push this team around up front and just run like a very basic power scheme like they were doing against Florida. And it worked against Florida. I just think Georgia's in a bit of a different league.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Now, flipping sides here, a Kentucky defense that you look at the numbers, really, really good. I thought were really impressive against Florida, only allowing 14 points per game. That's top 20 in the country. 4.2 yards per play. That's top 10 in the country. Dill, I look at this Georgia offense. I know you have some injuries. Running back room is quite frankly, from a health standpoint, a disaster. And Mary Smim's off the offensive line right now. Dill, running your offense gets a lot easier when you're Georgia, when you just find the best player in the field. And that seems to be what Georgia said in the second half of that Auburn game, is like, we got arguably the best pass catcher in the country. Hopefully no Ohio State fans are listening, and just get it to him. And he's great after the catch. He's great making contested catches. Brock Bowers took over that game. Georgia's got to pepper him. And if they do that, like, this Georgia offense is really hard to stop.
And that'll be the question. I mean, every defense in the world is going to have to try to solve it, is how do you stop Brock Bowers? Because, again, you look, Auburn had a lot of bodies around him. They were really trying to keep him out. They did an okay job in the first half. But, like, then what you mentioned, once Georgia really started to be like, all right, we got to feed this guy, it started to move. And I don't want that to come out at the expense. I mean, I think Beck is a really good quarterback. I think you look, he doesn't really put the ball in harm's way a ton. That one pick was that's a really good play. It's obviously contested ball, but he does I really like what he's doing. I think he's composed. I think he's making good throws, especially on third down. I think, again, as they get this offensive line healthy and as they get the running back room healthy, I like what Georgia's offense can kind of start to become.
You saw why Carson Beck won the job. Like, he's just making the plays you got to make. It's Brock Vandegrift. Does he arguably offer a higher ceiling? Yeah, sure, he might. Being said, Carson Beck was in elite control. This offense was electric on third downs, 10 of 12, I think, passing on third downs. Like, that's championship winning football, and you're used to seeing that out of Georgia. Now, the interesting part, you look at Kentucky on the defensive side of the ball, they'll give you the short yards. Like, they only have they give up 65% completion percentage to opposing quarterbacks. It's nothing to write home about. But you take a look at what they're doing in terms of not giving up the explosive plays. Only 6 yards per pass. That is top 15 in the country. So Kentucky will give you some of that short intermediate routes, but they're not going to give the explosive play. I wonder if Carson Beck can just take what's there, work that ball down the field, don't put the ball in harm's way. And if they can do that, like, you can drive the field on Kentucky. If they can do that, that's probably the question, though, heading into Saturday.
Yeah, and that'll be a thing, because I think you mentioned, like, Kentucky's defense is just – it's solid. I wouldn't call it smothering by any stretch of the imagination, but they're good at all levels. I think they have a couple good defensive tackles, especially Deion Walker, who can rush the passer pretty effectively. And they got, again, just at each level, they got guys who can play. So they don't give up anything. You look, Florida just didn't have anything easy. Every play they had to make, Florida had to make a play. The only one that was that Ricky Pearsall touchdown where they left him open in a bit of a bust. But every other play that, I mean, they were throwing the ball off the ground and trying to, like, they had to make plays to move it. And again, Georgia is it's a better team than Florida, of course, but you just see what Kentucky has. It's not easy to move it, and it's really hard to hit big plays.
When you have a defense that just doesn't give up the explosive play and forces opposing offenses to go 10 plays, 80 yards, and score, like picks, holding penalties, that type of stuff, it's hard for college football offenses to be that consistent. A lot of college football offenses are relying on the explosive play. Kentucky largely takes that away, and I think that's why that defense is so good, and I would echo that. I mean, they got some real dudes. Trevon Wallace, J.J. Weaver, like, those guys are playing some really, really good football in the front seven. They'll get into the pick here, 16.5-point dogs, Kentucky, heading into Georgia. How are we feeling there?
I don't love Georgia to cover this line, frankly. I don't think Kentucky's going to win this game just because, frankly, Devin Leary's not playing at a high enough level right now, and if you can't throw the ball against Georgia, I just don't see how that works, especially given what we talked about with, like, his inability to run it as well. So I don't see what Devin Leary is going to do to attack this Georgia team in the way you need to win. But I don't necessarily see Georgia scoring that many points to go cover a 16.5-point spread either. So I'll take Kentucky with the points, but again, I don't really think Georgia's in a ton of danger against this team in terms of an upset.
Yeah, I think most people are looking at this Georgia team, and you're not itching to bet 3-score spreads on them because, again, it does seem just like Kirby Smart has kind of a lack of interest in blowing teams out right now. And it's a lot of just more like, hey, we're winning, trying to get healthy. I'm with you. I would take Kentucky with the points here. But if I'm a Georgia fan, like, I'm heading into this, you got to feel good. Like, I just think Kentucky from a matchup standpoint, if Devin Leary continues to be, and I would use the word underwhelming, it's really hard to see this Kentucky offense scoring enough points to go into Athens and pull off this upset. But I could see Kentucky hanging around, keeping this close. And, hey, college football, you never know what can happen in that second half. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Let us know your picks in the comment section. We'll chop it up there. Appreciate y'all, and we'll talk to you guys later.